Welcome back, everyone, to Navigating Life After 40. This is the first live recording here on YouTube. So I appreciate all of you who are tuning in to watch, and also those of you who are watching the replay. And as usual, I hope each of you are doing well. I am still shocked that I am in season 4 and still so much to learn, still growing, but I'm excited to be here with you. So before we jump in and get started, everybody's always asking me about my frames. Where are you getting your frames from? I have several different ones. You guys have seen different pairs in episodes. If you haven't, you can take a look at some of the episodes that were uploaded. You might see these, you might see a different pair. But anyway, you can get those from Zeelool, ZEELOOL.com, and use the code NAVIGATE to save 15% off. And I have a surprise for you guys, a returning guest. So I have a surprise for you. But before I jump into that, I also want to share another really, really good sponsor that I want to put out there, because right now we are in that time of the year where we're trying to keep our immune systems up. And ladies also that are going through menopause and perimenopause, this is also a really good time for you to really focus on like your vitamin D levels and your hormones. And so if you have never heard of Black Girl Vitamins, please check them out. You can save 20% by using the code NAVIGATE at checkout. But it is really, really good. I have been taking their Minnow Chill vitamins lately. And when I tell you, those have been helping me so much with my perimenopausal symptoms. And I'll tell you one, most of you know when I talk about perimenopause and menopause with guest experts, I'm always talking about my sleep and how it really impacts my sleep as well as brain fog. And so when I take these pills, y'all, I go to sleep. So if anything else, it helps with insomnia. It does help with hot flashes. So I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Again, that is Black Girl Vitamins. Use code NAVIGATE at checkout. All right. So I have a returning guest who was here in season 1, y'all. And I really enjoy talking to her. She always brings really, really good information. She's always dropping gems. And she also has a podcast coming out soon herself. And I can't wait for her to share that with us today. I am going to introduce you all to Dr. Nick. For those of you who may not know Dr. Nick is here with me today. Welcome, Dr. Nick. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me again. Congratulations on all of these seasons.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to your podcast dropping soon as well. And I'm definitely going to make sure that I plug that in the description. So when you guys hear this episode, you're going to want to run and make sure that you are on the waiting list for her podcast to drop, because she is awesome. So again, thank you for being back. And for those of you who are new, Dr. Nick is a wellness advocate and coach, and she specializes in helping women prioritize rest and renewal, which we all need and we struggle to take advantage of. And so again, I'm so excited to have her back. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So for those who have not yet watched episode 1 or season 1, I'm sorry, of the episode that you were a part of, can you share a bit about your journey and how you became passionate about helping women embrace the power of pausing?
Yes, absolutely. So, hey everyone. It's great to be here. As Roni said, I am very passionate about self-care, about rest and renewal, restoration of your body, and just really taking good care, like being a good steward of your body. What happened to me though is that I wasn't doing that. And I was doing, as we often do, we are doing all the things that we think are, that we need to be doing, that we should be doing, that other people think we should be doing. And that was kind of a journey, a path that I was on for quite a while. So back when I was doing my doctoral program, I was working full time in a very highly intensive therapy therapy position, plus the doctorate. Plus, right in the middle of all of that, we hit COVID. And as all of that was happening, I had gotten into a car accident. And while I was working, I wasn't injured to the point where I needed to be hospitalized, but I was injured to the point where my body felt it. And it just was like this lingering pain. And so, to make a long story short, I kept trying to fight through that pain for a little bit without rest. I was still juggling the same amount of things and the same type of schedule from prior to the accident, which was not beneficial to my health or my healing mentally or physically. And so everyone around me was telling me what they thought I should do. Oh, you can't leave this job because you're going to lose all of these licensure hours, or you can't do this because of this. And what about money while you're in school? And, all of these things. And so I just I got to the point, I had kind of like that aha moment, the aha moment, the God moment, whatever you want to call it. I know he was talking to me and he was like, sit down, like you were going
Yeah.
to sit down. And it was really the pain that I had all throughout my body that caused me to, like, I like to call it now, like looking back at it, it was a forced pause. I was forced to pause because I couldn't really move. I couldn't really do what I was wanting my body to do. And not only that, mentally, it was difficult to keep up with all the reading, headaches, and all that kind of stuff. So it really was a forced pause. And so now what I'm passionate about is helping women understand that I don't want you to wait for a forced pause. You take your pause intentionally. You take the wheel of your life. You take control of everything that concerns you, and you put in your intentional pauses into your life. Whatever it may look different for different people, whatever your pauses are, but it is necessary to have.
Yeah, I love that. I always love hearing your story. I remember the first time you told your story, and I was like, oh my God. So, and I know she summed it up here in a nutshell, but there's like a whole story that she walks you through to kind of share where it started and how she ended up with having to take that forced pause. And it's something how God says, okay, I need you to sit down for a minute. And he takes that and then he uses it for something greater that we probably didn't even see for ourselves. And so there was a purpose behind the pause that he had you to take at that time. And so I see that and I visualize it when I hear your story. And I'm like, okay, God, sometimes I'm like, okay, God, I see you working. I see what you did here in this situation. I'm curious to know for so many women, because we're going to spend some time today talking about the power of the pause and the importance of us as women taking pauses. And so for many of us, that is a challenge because we're always on the go and we have to do everything for everyone else and putting ourselves last. So why do you feel it's important for women, especially at this stage of life, women in midlife in particular? Some are still caring for children, some are still caring for spouses, some are now caring for their parents. And we're also considered the sandwich generation, of course. So, why do you think it is so important for us to take those moments to pause right now?
Yeah, I think first, because of everything that you said, like we are so pulled in so many different directions. We wear so many different hats as women. And when you get to the ages that we are over 40, now we're dealing with not only the other people, we're dealing with all the changes in our own body. And so when you add those things on top of one another, and then you add on what's going on in the world, like, that's 3 layers of just stuff that can be feeling like it's out of control. And we know, like, just like they say on the airplane, you cannot put on you're supposed to put on your oxygen mask first. You're supposed to put on your oxygen mask first before you help someone else. And we consistently do not do that. We consistently are trying to help people from a very depleted place. And we cannot do that anymore. We can't do that. Like I am a champion for that. Like we cannot do that. We have got to take care of ourselves. We have got to prioritize ourselves. And here's the thing. When I say that we have to prioritize ourselves, I think people I know in my experience from the people that I coach, a lot of times they feel guilty about that word, like prioritize themselves, because it feels like you're shutting out all the other people that you love and care about. But what happens is what you're doing is you're not even giving yourself room at the table. Everybody else has every seat at the table. You need to at least make sure you're at the table with the people. You need to at least make sure you're at the table receiving your own care. It's like if you consider the table all of the care that you give out and you're not at the table, there's a problem. So when I say prioritize yourself, I don't mean only focus on you and forget about every other responsibility. I mean, make sure you're at the table, because too often we're not at the table and we're trying to, like, help. It's like the table's up here. We're down here trying to help the people up here. We can't do that. We need to be at the head of the table so that we can see, and then we can also take care of ourselves. You need a seat at your own table. Okay.
I
So
like that.
like you need
I
a seat
like that.
at the table.
Yes, I like that. Like, you need a seat at the table, and you are right. Like, it also gives me this visual of how when I was growing up, my mom would cook, right? And then when it was time to eat, she was serving everyone else. She served my dad first, and then me and my siblings. And in that visual that I have in my mind, like, she did get a seat. She had a seat. She sat down. But in this way, I'm looking at it in the reverse. Like, how do you put yourself at the head of this table, and you also have a place to sit and to eat, and you take care of you first, but you still have these other priorities that are sitting in these other seats that you can also take care of as well. But you're able to do that because you're at the head of this table. You have a seat at this table. And also, it makes me think about, you created this table. What does that table look like for you mentally, your mind, like when you create that table for yourself? Oh, that made me. I told you I was dropping some gems.
Yeah.
You have me thinking. I'm telling you, and so that's what has me thinking, because we hear often to create tables, or if there's not a seat at the table, you create one. We hear those things, especially when it comes to like corporate America and in the workplace, but we don't think about that when it comes to our own self-care and what we do in our own personal lives. And so
Mhm.
that's where my mind is, like that visualization. What does that
Yeah.
table look like in your personal life? And how can you build that table out where you're sitting in that head seat, like you mentioned, but you have these other priorities in these seats, but you're taking care of you first.
Yes,
I like that.
absolutely. Yes. I mean, I love it too. I'm like, come on, ladies. We have to be at our own tables. You know what I'm saying? And it can look however you want it to look, as long as you are there.
What about the pauses? Because for some women, they're listening to this and they're like, when you talk about pause, what does that look like? When some people hear the word pause, they may be thinking, oh, I need to take, an entire day to stop and do nothing. Or is she talking about, maybe I need to go on a vacation? Or what does she mean by the pause? What do those pauses look like?
Mhm. Yeah, it's such a good question, because so many people do think that pausing has to be a certain length of time, and that it can be expensive, right? And people think that it can be to take care of yourself and to do the things that we traditionally consider as self-care. And sometimes it can, let's be honest. But self-care and take it, the power of the pause, what I talk about in my workshops and things like that, is that self-care is not an event. Self-care is a way of life. So in order to have a consistent self-care routine, it's not going to be, I take a vacation every week or even every month, unless that's your life. But for most of us, that's not our life. Our life is getting through the day, the week, the month, sometimes moment by moment. And so a pause in that instance in our everyday life can look like, you know what, I need 5 minutes and breathe. Because, we do not breathe properly. We do not take in
Yes.
enough oxygen, right? That's just a common fact amongst all of us, because our lives are so busy. We don't sometimes understand, some of us don't understand the importance of that. So pausing could just be simply, I am going to prioritize my mental clarity and mental space, and I'm going to start pausing 5 minutes 3 times a day or 5 minutes every hour, whatever it looks like for you. And I sometimes hesitate to give those little examples like that because sometimes people can get stuck on what I
Yeah.
said out of my mouth and like, oh, I have to do that. And I'm not saying you have to do it a certain way because all of us are different. All of our lives are different. Our responsibilities are different. The point is, the key is that you do it. You figure out what is doable for you in your day. So it might be those 5 minutes of breathing, like it just intentional breathing or sitting in silence. Sometimes I don't even focus on anything. I just need to turn all the lights off and just be quiet because we have so much stimulus coming in, so much information all the time. The lights, especially if you work in an office building, the corporate, the ultraviolet, all the lights that you
Yeah.
find in corporate buildings, it can be very sterile in some buildings. And that's overstimulating to us. Looking at a computer all day, caretaking for a parent where you're constantly moving and constantly taking a baby, grandchild, whatever, all of these different, our lives, our schedules, our days look very different. Again, our responsibilities are different. So what does it look like for you to take those pauses throughout your day? Whether it's, like I just said, breathing, or maybe you're a writer and you can just kind of journal some thoughts, or maybe that's overwhelming and maybe you want to color. Like, hey, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to just sit here and color in this adult coloring book. Um, or like sometimes doodling, just actually do, like, even if it's not a coloring book, it's just paper and you're just kind of doodling because there's something about the movement of your hand and on the paper. It literally does something in your brain. It calms your body and it helps your nervous system. So if you can implement things like that on a regular basis, and the challenge with it is you feel like you're not doing anything and people stop. They're like, oh, I don't need to do this. It's just 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. But it actually does because it's a cumulative thing that you're doing for your body, spirit, and mind, which is all connected. So when you do these little actions or sit in silence or breathe, all these things are helping to regulate your nervous system, which we need so desperately because of everything that we're exposed to in a given day and all of our responsibilities we're exposed to in the world. And so when I talk about the power of the pause, I include the things that you mentioned, right? The vacations, the massages, the what, all of that stuff too. You want to do that, you can. It's great. It's fun. It helps. But those things don't actually help. Like, let's say you are burned out. You're experiencing what true burnout is, not just I'm tired, but true burnout. True burnout comes from chronic stress. So if you go on vacation for a week and you feel good and you come back and your life looks exactly the same, chronic stress, you are going to go right back to what you were doing. So we have to find ways to create these pauses in our life to lower the reactions of our nervous system and give our body space and calm. And we also have to address the chronic stress in our lives, which is about boundaries. It's really about creating these boundaries for yourself that allows you to be at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. When you think about, so for the people who are busy, because I'm going to touch on a couple of things, but I want to hit this one first because it's top of mind. There are some women who are saying, you know what, I'm just so busy. Where
Mm-hmm.
do I find this 5 minutes at, in my life? What can that look like for the busy woman that's always on the go? I'm running between this with my kids plus work and home, and their minds are always racing because they always have something to do and they can't shut it down. So what does that pause look like for a woman that's always on the go?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in attaching the pause to something. So, for example, if you have to take your child to football practice or soccer practice or whatever practice, or you have to pick them up create a pause in the going. So like if you are in the car by yourself on the way to pick them up, let that space in your car. Like sometimes we will just, have the music going, or we'll be in traffic and we're focusing on other things. But if you can try to almost like make your car a sanctuary to you, like whatever music you need, whatever, even smell like essential oil or something that you can do in the car while you're driving. And then let's say you end up having to sit and wait for a few minutes. Take those few minutes for yourself. But I know what we have a tendency to do is, okay, after this, I have to do this, 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 and this. Okay. And then I have to go over here and do this and this and this. And so it is a discipline to actually pause. It feel it is almost work to pause because of the lives that we live. Now, if you're someone who is like completely overscheduled and you're just so busy, that's a whole nother issue that we can talk about, because that, I mean, it's not about saying you need to not do this responsibility that you have. It's about saying, how can we make your life and the responsibilities that we have better work for your health and your mental health and your the way that you relate to the people around you? How can we do this in a healthier way? So it's like there's two issues. There's the issue of the scheduling of the busy person, because we almost glorify being busy, like as women,
Yes.
right? We say it's almost like a badge of honor, but I really don't
I
believe that
don't
it is
either.
a badge of honor. I believe that there are better ways that we can manage a full life. So it's not to like condemn anyone or make anyone feel guilty. It's just to let you know that there's a better way, and we can work on that. And it may not be easy because, when you start talking about your schedule and your responsibilities, there's other people involved, right? And so there's, it may be a husband or several kids or whatever, whoever, parents that are also impacted by whatever it is that you're doing. But we want to take care of ourselves in a way that allows us to be here long and healthy, not only for those people, but for ourselves and our dreams, our passion, our purpose, our vision that may be outside of that. Because that's another thing that happens, right? We lose ourselves as women in the people that we care for. We can lose as a
Yes.
mom. We lose, like, I hear moms all the time say, I don't even know what my purpose is anymore because I've just been
Yes.
raising my kids for 25 years, which is
Hmm.
awesome, right? We need moms who are dedicated moms like that. But then once those kids are leaving, what do you do when
Right.
your schedule may not be so full anymore and you haven't focused on yourself and your heart and your vision and your purpose? It's like you're redefining who you are, because now you're still mom, obviously, but you're mom that's needed in a different way. And so that can apply to so many of us in so many different ways. But so the point is that you can, because your question was, how can busy people implement the pause? And so what I'm saying is attach the pause to things that you
Something.
already do. Attach it to something, like you brush your teeth every morning. You can
Yeah.
attach a pause, because it's awesome to start the day with a pause, because it kind of sets the tone for your day. So if you are saying like, okay, I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to take this minute to just like breathe and just think of something that I'm grateful for, and then just move on with your day. It seems like nothing, but it's not. And it is doing something cumulatively if we're consistent with it. And then the other side is about with the schedule. So it's like you can discipline yourself and attach the pause to something, but then also we need to work on this being busy women. Like, let's be productive women with full lives, but not just busy. Like, busy means something else to me than productive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Same thing. I agree with that. And I'm glad that you mentioned that busy is almost like a badge of honor, because I see so many women doing that, and they talk about, well, oh, I have this and I have that, and I am not putting down the stay-at-home mom. I'm not putting that down, but I see it mostly glorified in a way with the stay-at-home moms. And I know that you guys are busy, but in the midst of that, how can you take a moment to care for yourselves? Take a moment to pause. When do you pause? Where do you find that pause in your day-to-day life as a stay-at-home mom? And so I am glad that you pointed that out. And I'm also glad that you pointed out the other little small things that can be done, those 5-minute, breaks to take a moment and pause and to breathe, and the coloring on the paper. That is something that I started doing. I started going into AI and I started creating my own coloring sheets. And I, tell it what I wanted to say and be really descriptive, and it will create it. And then I can save it and I can print it off. And I'm someone, like, I love to color. When I would be in meetings sometimes and it would be so much going on, and I'm like, okay, this is chaotic. So I would draw on paper. Draw. A lot of you guys that have been listening to previous episodes know that I went to school for fashion design back in the 90s. And so I still sometimes draw on paper, and those things are really helpful. And it kind of helps me to be present in the moment, which leads me to this before I take a twist into another part of our episode. When we're talking about the pause, are we talking about being present in the moment? Taking a moment, taking that pause to be present in the moment? Or is it pause, let me take a couple of deep breaths, and then keep it moving? And it can be, that's still being in the present too. But when you're
Mhm.
talking about taking a pause, are you specifically talking about finding a way to just be in the present right now? Because a lot of us are operating on a day-to-day like machines, I would say, like little robots, human robots, but we're not present. We're not fully present. And it goes back to that busyness that we talked about. And everybody's busy and everybody's running around and our minds are racing. But are we talking about, with this pause, really being present and centering ourselves and shutting out everything just for that moment? Focus on us, be in the present, then step back into whatever the space was that we were in.
Yeah, yeah. I think because there's a need for both, I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about both. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
you have to, as you said, center yourself, be grounded, kind of shut everything off that's around you. Again, that helps with your, like I was saying earlier, with the clarity of your mind and calming your nervous system when you can actually do that and really shut everything out and center yourself. But then there's time also where you might need to shut yourself out of what's happening next or what happened before and focus on what is happening right now. For example, I was like, as you were talking, I was thinking about how sometimes as moms, you'll see moms at sporting events, but they're on their phones. Or and so and they might be doing something valid. Who knows what they're, I don't know. But
Yeah.
but 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 it's like that's just a visual example that I have of, we all do that, whether we're moms or not. We'll be in a
Mm-hmm.
setting, in a situation, and we're not enjoying the moment that we're in. So if you consider a pause in that way as well, where you're pausing from everything else that might grab your attention, like what you have to do after this event or what happened at the last appointment or meeting that you were in, you can pause and say, you know what? I'm going to center myself in this present moment. I'm going to focus right here. I'm not going to think about what I have next. I'm just going to, right here where I am, this person that's with me, focus what I'm here to do for. So there's it's like, and those pauses have kind of two different purposes, because the one pause is shutting everything out to just kind of like center yourself and settle
Yeah.
yourself, give yourself a moment to kind of refresh and recharge. And then the other type of pause is kind of like I need to enjoy the life that I'm living. So let me shut these other things out and focus just on this moment, which also can help your nervous system because you're
Yeah.
not bouncing from, because that whole thing like, oh, I'm just, what do they call that? Multitasking. I'm just multitasking. We're never multitasking because our brain is just jumping faster and faster back and forth in between what it is that we're trying to multitask and do. Multitasking is a myth because our brains can't focus on more than one thing at a time. So it's like, and the more you do that, the higher you're perfecting your system. So I would say both of those. That the power of the pause is that it is not, what is that word? Unilateral. It's not one thing. The power of the pause is that it can be many, many things, many types of things. And I feel you need all the different types of pauses that there can be for you. I think it's really important that people know that, like, there's kind of those big pauses that we talk about, like the vacations or, the massage and things like that, where we are kind of breaking from life and doing this thing. It's almost like an event, or that you go to a conference or retreat or whatever. But then there's that day to day, center, stop,
Yeah.
breathe. And then there's that, you know what, I need to enjoy my life. So I'm going to pause and focus on what I'm doing, not do 3, 4 things at one time.
Yeah. So it sounds like, just to make sure I hear you correctly, and the listeners and the viewers as well, is pauses can mean many things, and we need all of them so that we as people can function and operate better on a day-to-day basis and keep ourselves centered and our nervous systems regulated. But it's also about knowing when you need to take the pause and the type of pause you need. So it could be vacation at some point. You might decide, you know what, next month I'm going to go and get a massage. Today, however, I'm going to take a moment to be present in the moment, especially right now with it being holiday season and there are so many people with their families. How do you take a moment now to pause and be in the present moment with your family? Or it could be, you know what? It's chaotic right now. Everybody's loud in my house. How can I just take a moment to pause and breathe for a few minutes, or step away and go to the restroom and pause and breathe for a few minutes to have that space by myself, and then go back into this room and enjoy the people that I'm here with. And so I'm hearing all of that. We need all of the pauses. So it's not one or the other. It's just a combination of things. But for the sake of right now, how can we utilize these small pauses along the way as we are also utilizing the other pauses, the bigger ones as well? I am going to have to maybe do an episode where I share my pause moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do one where I'm sharing my pause moment soon. So I have that written down somewhere, but I didn't think of it as a pause, but it technically is a pause. Shifting gears a little bit. I know that we had this recent election and 92% of Black women voted to save this country and to create change in a positive way. We know that both politicians are not perfect, of course, but they chose to go and vote for the one that was going to save the rights of women, and do what is right for this particular country. And with this election came a lot of, I would say, people who were upset, angry, frustrated by the outcome. And that led Black women to say, you know what? We've shown up in this massive way where we mobilized, we organized, we advocated, and we did the thing at the polls. And 92% showed that, right? Now they're taking a break and they're saying, I want to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for us to sit down. It's time for us to be still. This is not our fight anymore. We've done enough. For years and for centuries, we were always fighting. We're always trying to do the things to save everybody else. even though 92% of the women, I ain't gonna say all 92%, but a huge majority have said, and I've seen this all across social media, where women are now saying, I'm going to stay out of this. This is not my fight. I am going to, everybody saying thoughts and tariffs and prayers and what are concepts of prayers. I'm seeing, I'm seeing, which is hilarious. But one thing I know about Black women is we have these big hearts. And we can say that we're not going to get involved. We're going to stay out of it. But we know that when things seem chaotic, we try to jump in and we try to fix it. So during this time, how can these women, Black women in particular, focus on taking that pause that is needed to care for themselves, even if they have a moment of, should I jump in and do something or advocate or whatever? How can it really be true to this moment of taking this break? Or I'm going to just say taking a pause from being the savior of the
Yeah.
world right now.
Yeah. Um, I think that, well, first of all, of course, I believe Black women are amazing and full of love and full of just amazing genius and creativity. And I think that it is important for several things to happen. One, for this to be a time of reflection. And what I mean by that is not just like reflecting on what happened or where we go from here, but really on reflecting on yourself, like reflecting on where you are in life, what your circle of influence is, who you are, your hopes, your dreams in your circle of influence, because we all have a circle of influence. And so when something big like this happens and it seems like it kind of can seem like we don't know, I don't know what to do because,
Yeah.
like, and it's kind of out, it's like at the macro level, it feels very out of control, out of your control. I like to encourage people to really focus on what is in your control, like taking care of not only yourself, but just your communities at a micro level. My truest desire is to be the woman that I maybe didn't have, like, seeing around me when I was growing up. I mean, I think I've had good role models and things like that. But today, more than ever, there's so many of us that are doing these amazing things that these little girls need to see. And I really think it's important that we focus on that. Not to say that the other stuff we don't necessarily need to focus on, but I just feel like there's so much power in being that representation just in daily life for the girls that are coming up behind us. So that was reflecting, like, who can you influence and how is, so that's one. Two, I think it is operating in great wisdom right now. Wisdom before you speak, thinking before you speak, wisdom in the endeavors that you move into, wisdom in any type of business connections. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with this? It had everything to do with this because you don't want to stretch yourself thin for things that don't align with who you are and with who with the world you want to see. So I think really just again, a lot of wisdom, which for me comes from prayer and connection with God, creator, and just really to that and the peace that can come from that. Because really, regardless of the outcome of any, not even just this election, regardless of the outcome of any election, I believe that God is still in control. Um, to the macro level, meaning that anything is possible and God can work in any number of ways to fix any number of situations that's happening in the world. And I choose to believe that. And I feel like it's really important in this season for us to really tap into that spiritual connection and spiritual wisdom to really guide our steps, our actions, and our words very carefully. And then the last thing is just really taking care of yourself, because things like this and the way I've seen people just kind of fighting, it can really take a lot out of you. Not only like physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so everything that we talked about today is going to be critically important of really taking these powerful pauses. As you said, like you mentioned earlier about just how so many women are like, this is not my fight. I can't do this anymore. And that's a valid response. So what are you going to do? Are you going to take that energy and use it to bring healing and renewal to yourself? Or are you going to be just angry?
Yeah.
And that's, it's not that you should or should not be angry. Like you feel however you feel. But the reality is that these strong emotions that are kind of attached to like a negative connotation, they're not good for our bodies. They're not good for our health. And you know that how many women, Black women specifically, have high blood pressure and, diabetes and all of these things that the way that we think in our minds, whether we want to believe it or not, impacts all of that. And so I
Yes.
just encourage people to really tap into taking care of yourself. Release anger, release forgiveness to whoever you need to forgive. Because I feel like we all need to forgive somebody. I'm not saying that specific to the elections, but maybe for some people it is specific to the election. I hear people talking all the time about, oh, I never thought my friend would believe this way, or I never thought this would happen. I never thought my friend would do this or say this or do this. We really have to release those things. We really do, because those things can eat at us and really cause actual disease, because we are at dis-ease and it can truly cause disease in our bodies. And so that would be the thing that I would say. It's just like, um, that pausing, making sure we're pausing, the walking in wisdom, but
Yeah.
do it from a place of fullness, not from an empty, depleted place. That's where the wisdom comes in. You have to know when to step into these things. You have to know
Right.
how much of yourself to give, because you're not here to be depleted and used up by everybody and then not be filled back into. That's not what we're here for. And so make sure you're at your own table.
Yes, I love that. Make sure you're at your own table and taking care of yourself first, as you mentioned, not operating from an empty cup. So filling your cup first, and then what can you do to pour back into young girls and into the community, and also allowing whatever your higher power is to guide you in a space of wisdom. As you mentioned, it's going to be really important as we move into this next season, is everything is going to have to be that spiritual wisdom. What do I say? What do I not say? As you mentioned, certain connections. Is this a good business connection? It's going to really be imperative to pray about everything before you make certain movements, and not operating on emotion, just taking a moment and pause. If you feel yourself getting emotional, pause. All right, real quick, before we wrap up, I want to do a rapid fire question with you. And I'm not going to do all of
Okay.
these, just so the people can get to know you a little bit better.
All
All
right.
right. So, what is your favorite way to take a pause?
Ooh, okay. I love walking in nature, especially if there's water nearby.
Love that. Okay. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Well, I'm usually a morning person until my current job, which is working me late. But yes,
Yeah.
naturally a morning person.
Okay. Your favorite go-to self-care ritual?
I'm gonna say it's my feet. I like soaking my feet in hot water, like Epsom salt, and then I use essential oils and then lotion them up.
Love it. One book you recommend for self-care or mindfulness?
I love Dr. Christine Neff's book on self-compassion. I think it's just called that, The Self-Compassion Guide by Dr. Christine Neff.
I love that. All right. I'm going to make sure I drop that down in the notes as
Yeah.
well, so you guys can check that out. Thank you so much for being here today and chatting with me. And thank you for coming back again as a guest. I always enjoy having you here and having these important conversations that impact women and to help create change in women. You dropped a lot of gems today, and I'm so appreciative.
Thank you for
Where
having me.
can the listener? Yes, and your podcast is dropping. You got to let us know. I know you said January. Is there a particular date in January that we can be
Yes.
on the lookout for?
Well, listen, we had a particular date, but you know what? We had to pause because life happened. And I have a co-host for this podcast. And so we had some things that happened in our family and we had to make some adjustments. So we actually start officially recording this week, and I'm going to say by January 30th, but for you to be able to follow us, if you just follow us on socials at my full name, Nicole Pertiller, I'm there on Instagram and Facebook. And the podcast itself is called That Plant Life Podcast. And so find it on Instagram and Facebook as well. So either way, you'll find the podcast or we're connected.
Yes, and I will also drop that in the show notes, you guys, so that you can tune in when that drops. And then I'm also connected with her on social media, so I'm always posting, promoting people's stuff and like my stories and stuff like that. So I'll definitely share it there as well once that date is dropped.
Yes.
Thank you all so much again for being here with your newly coined, for those of you who have listened to other episodes, Midlife Bestie. And I just want to remind you that taking a pause it's not just a luxury, but it's a necessity.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to hearing how taking pauses have helped you out and also what you learned from today's conversation. You can join me in the Facebook group, Navigating Life After 40, and you can also follow me on all social platforms at Navigating Life After 40. That's 40, actually. And Navigating Life After 40. I will see you guys soon. Have a great rest of the day. That's a wrap for this episode of Navigating Life After 40. I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. If you love what you're hearing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps me to reach more amazing women like yourself who are trying to navigate this amazing life. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep living your best life.